If you don't have one of the books yet, Jason's got some more. If you just raise your hand if you don't have one and you would like one, he's got some more books. We got one in the back, Jason.
I got it. I don't know how I missed Rory. He's been here as early as he's done.
So let me just start by saying that if you've ever listened to a YouTube video on 2 times speed, that's what the whole class is going to be like. I'm going to talk like this the whole time, and we should be able to get through the material if I talk like that. Don't know how this is going to go. It's been a while since I've taught an adult class, and so if I make some childish jokes, you'll understand why. I've been teaching younger classes for a while, and I think I'm kind of in that whole zone and that whole mode of thinking. Let's start with a prayer real quick before we go into this. Dear Father in heaven, we love you. We love your truth. We love the fact that you have provided us with a truth that is unlike any other. We're thankful for the truth that you love us so much that you would die for us. We're thankful that we were able to take the Lord's Supper this morning and worship you. And we pray, Father, that you will help us in every way to be able to handle the truth in life and to be able to share that truth with other people. Help us in this class this morning and be with us all. In Jesus' name we pray, and amen. The title in the book was, Can We Handle the Truth? It's chapter 1. It feels good to hear things that we agree with and that benefit us. I like that. I like truth when it matches what I already think and what I want. We embrace truth when it enlightens us, and we recoil from it, though, sometimes when it convicts us and it kind of rubs us the wrong way. It is in our quest for truth that we sometimes struggle to handle the truth. We know that truth is important for learning and growing. It helps us understand the world better and make better choices. Even when truth is tough to hear, facing the truth can make us stronger and wiser. Truth is good for us, especially when it tells us things that we do not want to hear about ourselves. Like when it says we made a mistake or we need to change something about ourselves. This happens because we don't always like changing our mind or admitting that we're wrong. It is common for us to ignore or explain away the truth. And the reason why it's common because of an ancient lie that was told a long time ago in a garden that was found in Eden. So even though truth can sometimes be hard to handle, it's worth listening to and trying to understand. And I will get used to using this. In a book written back in 1996, this is how old some of this goes back. It's been around for a while. There was a book written called The Death of Truth by Dennis McCullum. And there was a poll, a Gallup poll, where 88% of the evangelicals said that they believe that the Bible is the written word of God, that it was accurate in all that it teaches. Yet out of that 88%, 53% of them responded that there is no such thing as absolute truth. This is disturbing, and how can that even be true? How can anybody believe that? This is plaguing us today, and it's plaguing us in ways that are starting to become difficult to answer sometimes. Absolutism. Absolutism is this idea that there is an absolute truth. There are opponents to this idea that there's an absolute truth, and they've been trying to tear this down for quite a while. This is a philosophical or political theory that basically believes and advocates that there's a certain set of rules and certain things are true. And I put the chess pieces up there because in the game of chess, you have certain rules. The pawn, he can move forward 1 square at a time. Unless it's his opening move, he can move 2, and if he's taken a piece, he can move on a diagonal. The queen, she can move any way she wants to. Now, these rules of chess don't change because you're playing with somebody else. Can you imagine that if Brian and I were playing a game of chess and he makes some move, I say, Brian, the queen can't do that, and he goes, what's true for you is true for you, and what's true for me is true for me. I can make the chess piece do whatever I want. Now, sometimes children play the game of chess that way, and it's a little frustrating when we're teaching them how to play chess. But no matter where you play, what culture you play chess in, it's pretty much the same idea. So what's been taught for the last 60-plus years in colleges is that this is to be feared. what's more disturbing, though, is the reason why they've taught that absolutism is to be feared isn't because of an error with absolutism. What it is they say that it's intolerant. And that's the problem that they have with it. The error isn't because of an error. And so, and you can always tell when somebody's making an argument and they don't have anything. Because if you don't have a reason or a way to explain something that you believe and you don't have an argument, you know what you do. You call them names. And so the idea is you are an intolerant bigot. That's the idea here. And that's the label that has been placed on people who believe in absolute truth. This has gone on for a while, so we're seeing, I think, the other side of 60 years of this, of how our culture now responds to living in a world that's been this way for a while. You know, God knew some things. In Romans, the first chapter, starting around verse 18, it states that people who ignore or reject the knowledge of God suppress the truth. And that's what's been happening. We've been suppressing the truth. They suppress it by exchanging it for lies and worshiping created things rather than the Creator. And this suppression of truth occurs when individuals prioritize their desires, their beliefs, their ideologies over the revealed absolute truth of God. They chase after something else. Suppressing this leads to spiritual blindness and moral decay. Our culture has come to a point where the phrase, "that's true for you, but not for me," is often said without anyone challenging it. I want you to see the key word there, me. Me. In our modern world, there's a hesitancy to embrace moral and religious truths in the hearts and minds of many people. I believe this is driven mostly by a desire to evade accountability for my actions. God called those actions sin when I do that. And I want to avoid that. So since everything is about me, and since I want to feel better about me, without me suffering, it is easy for me to seek and embrace a perspective where truth is perceived as subjective and there are no absolutes. And Madison Avenue knows this, and this is why this will sound so familiar. Because I deserve a break today to get up and get away to McDonald's. I can have it my way at Burger King because I'm worth it, L'Oreal. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now, Verizon? Give me a break. Give me a break. Give me a piece of that Kit Kat bar. Because I want my baby back ribs. Because life is about me. And when this happens, what is actually happening is I start to listen to the creature in the garden who wants me to believe that it's all about me, the individual, my convictions, my desires, and he tells me this to undermine the notion of absolute rights and wrongs. Why? He tells me I will be like God because it's all about me. Think about relativism and Satan's deception. Satan suggested to Eve that she could define truth for herself, independent of God's command. And this temptation led Eve to question God's absolute truth and embrace a subjective perspective of truth. So Satan exploited Eve's desire to evade accountability of her actions. Well, what can we expect? Just as Eve's acceptance of Satan and her deception led to consequences for humanity, embracing relativism today in our modern culture can lead to moral and spiritual confusion, alienation from God's truth, and ultimately negative consequences for individuals and society as a whole. Basically saying the consequences of this kind of thinking hasn't changed. It's always been this way. This isn't really new. We've arrived at this point in time in this country and everything, but this has all happened before. Things like this have been going on forever. Sometimes it's hard for us to accept moral and religious truth because we don't want to admit we're responsible for our actions. We might think that truth is truth depending on who you ask, but really we might just be scared. We're afraid of facing the truth. The truth is not to be feared. Teach me your way, O Lord, that I may walk in your truth. Unite my heart to fear your name. Truth holds the key to understanding. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. Truth is like a guiding light in the darkness of uncertainty. Send out your light and your truth. Let them lead me. Let them bring me to your holy hill and to your dwelling. Truth is honesty, reigning supreme. Therefore, having put away falsehood, let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Truth is the foundation of integrity and character. Who shall dwell on your holy hill? Who walks blamelessly and does what is right and speaks truth in his heart? Truth is the language of an honest heart. Whoever speaks the truth gives honest evidence. Truth is the beacon that guides us through life's storms. Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So we're going to go to question number 1. How would you define truth? We have the mics back here. Mary's got her hand up. Yeah, hold the mic close. Is it on? And turn the mic on.
Hello. Okay. I defined it as an accurate representation of reality.
Okay. Okay. Jeff?
Well, I tried to look at it generically first, just generic truth. I said it's information that can be relied on and that is absent of any falsehood. It's factual and it's real. And then I put a spiritual application to it, and I said Jesus said he was truth, like you pointed out. So that's truth.
That's good. Okay.
And I said state the obvious facts, an accurate description, absolute, and excludes the opposite.
Okay. I couldn't hear all that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The mic went out.
I said stating the obvious facts or an accurate description, absolute, and excludes the opposite.
Okay. Okay. Jason?
It's the objective facts of what is. One of the things I noticed when you were reading the scripture, many times as they're praying to God, they said, your truth. That's the only time you should ever say your truth, because God is the truth. So his truth is truth. Outside of that, it, like you said, it has to be objective. I mean, we have to be able to agree that 2 + 2 is 4. And that's an objective reality. That's a truth. That's a fact. And once we start deviating away from that and saying that, oh, there is no truth and everybody can define their own, that's when we lose the objectivity part.
Okay. Anyone else? Joe?
Yeah, there's another element to it. It's a sort of a time element. It's constant. It's not true today and not true tomorrow. It stays forever.
Okay. When we have discussions about truth as Christians, I think it's easier for us. We have a lot of scriptures that we go to. There is a frustrating thing that happens to some of us sometimes is that the question is actually asked of Jesus, and Pilate asked that question, right? He goes, what is truth? And it's so frustrating because you know what happens next. He walks out of the room. He doesn't wait for the answer. And you're looking at that verse in the Bible and you're going, hey, what just happened? He just asked the question that we all want to know the answer to, and he didn't stick around for the answer. And there's a lot of debate about why, but it's a frustration for us. But if you just turn the page back one chapter, Jesus just simply says, thy word is truth, in his prayer to God. Thy word is truth. Truth is interesting, but what about this? If I said chocolate cake's the best cake, is that true? And usually. All right. How about if I just said cake is the best, Brian? Yeah, Brian's going to agree with that. Chocolate cake's the best. The cake rules, right? And I didn't know I was turning into a teenager just then when my voice went up like that. But I thought I was done with that. But that is an opinion. Opinions are different. Opinions are subjective. I think that sometimes it's an unfortunate thing that we use truth. That's true for me. No, that's my opinion. There are things like that, that's my opinion, and it's subjective. And for me, if you said, do you like strawberries? And I said no, you would say, well, Tim doesn't like strawberries. I do like strawberries, sir. He's looking at me like, how does Tim not like strawberries? I do. But if I said that, you would say, well, that's true for him, but it's not true for me. We use these types of expressions. But this is important. What Jason was saying is there's some absolutes. There are some absolutes out there like 1 + 1, unless you're looking at binary math, is always going to equal 2, but it's going to look like an 11 if you do that in other math forms. All right. So when we think about truth, and I kind of got off script here, let me, as I sometimes do. All right. Let me make sure I'm on the right page. Okay. In our daily lives, we demand truth in various aspects, right? The book brings this part out, that truth is non-negotiable for us. We demand truth in certain things. We believe it should be true in safety and relationships. We expect it from our family members, our loved ones, our mentors, our religious leaders, technology experts, doctors, healthcare providers, financial advisors. We expect it in our courtrooms, in the legal system. Our bosses shouldn't say, we're doing a great job if they plan on letting us go tomorrow. Airlines shouldn't lie about flight times if their pilots or if their pilots are ready to fly. Mechanics should tell us the real cost and what it needs to actually fix that car that we're working on. And for school or just knowing things, we need accurate information in our textbooks. Also just life, food labels, the news on the TV, what our teachers tell us, what the politicians say, what the road signs say. We demand, we expect all of those things to be true. However, what about morality and religion? For some reason, our society and our culture doesn't feel as strongly about we demand truth when it comes to morality and to religion. When it comes to the biggest thing in life, where are you going to go after you die? We're not as worked up about that. There's a glaring inconsistency when it comes to this kind of thing. It's common for many people to reject truth in these types of matters. Don't tell me what to do. I don't want anybody telling me what to do. The world prefers views that teach and suggest that truth and morals are subjective. Well, you know why, right? That's what we were saying earlier. I don't like that feeling. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want somebody telling me I'm wrong. This is what is known as the relativistic view. Truth can be different for each person or group of people. Doesn't that sound sweet? It has this ring to it. People are attracted to that. Truth can be different for each person. But I want you to think of the snake in the garden saying that. He's saying something other than what God said to Eve. And he's saying, this is much better for you. And that's what he's saying to us. This is a better way of thinking. This is better for you. They believe that truth varies from culture to culture as well. And they oppose the idea that truth is the same for everyone all the time in every place. See, they don't believe in chess rules. They believe the rules change depending on who's playing the game and where it's being played. I wonder what that game of chess really looks like for them. The multiple views of truth create a contradiction. And there's cultural confusion that comes out of all of this. The reasons people give for following their relativistic view will vary. You're going to hear different things when you start talking to people. They want freedom. I want freedom to make my choices. So freedom's a word that you'll hear thrown out there. I don't want to be restricted by external moral standards or religious doctrines, as though they're bad things. I don't want to be restricted. They're trying to tie me up and keep me over here, and I can't have any fun when God's doing that to me. And who are they to do that to me anyways? We are being influenced by a culture that emphasizes individualism. I can't comment on this. I've always thought this was funny, though, that the more we try to be individual, the more we start to look like everybody else is trying to look like they're an individual. These trends happen, and you just don't do anything and just hold the steady course. You're going to be the one that's different, an individual, just by being you. So, what are we going to do about this? And what's this really all about? I want to suggest that it's about reaching the lost. There's a comment in the book, Brian, I didn't like the comment where you look like a super genius. the goal of knowing this, that's fun to look like a super genius, by the way. The goal isn't for us to look like super geniuses. The goal is for us to reach the lost. I have a suspicion that there's a lot of people out there who are atheists, who are the field that's white and ready for the picking. We're going to read something in just a minute. I'm going to show you what I think is very possible. So we want to seize opportunities to reach the lost. And to do that, they're going to have questions about what is truth, and can truth be known? Can truth about God be known? Or can we know what truths about God are even? Or why does it even matter? So truth is stating, we heard some good things, stating the realities, telling it like it is. I think that's what the book says, right? Telling it like it is. Truth corresponds to its object. Truth describes actual circumstances. Truth is absolute, and it applies, more importantly, universally. It's going to apply everywhere. And that's how you know when you're dealing with truth. I want to use Nathan confronting David after his sin with Bathsheba. Truth is stating reality accurately, telling it like it is. If you think about that story, Nathan tells David a parable about a rich man who unjustly takes a poor man's only lamb. John Cagle and I were just talking about this. And accurately reflects that the reality of David's actions, but it's so indirectly done. And just to let you know, when you do this, it's called the Nathan principle. When you approach somebody about sin and you do it in an indirect way like this, it's the Nathan principle. It's a really good way to talk to somebody about difficult subjects. But he does it indirectly, allowing David to recognize the truth for himself. Truth corresponds to its object. In this case, Nathan just says it. He goes, "You're the man." David is the object, and what he has done is Nathan is highlighting the injustices, the immorality of his behavior. You're the man. And truth describes actual circumstances. By revealing truth, Nathan paints an accurate picture of the situation, exposing the reality of David's sin, which he tried to conceal. And this shows David the gravity of his actions and the sin that he had committed. Truth is absolute, and it applies universally. This is the reason why I chose David. David, he was the one who was appointed king by God himself. Appointed by God. Yet he is not exempt from the truth. I mean, if there's going to be a character that's exempt of truth, it would certainly be King David, yet that didn't happen. Even the most powerful individuals are accountable to absolute truth and moral standard. It applies universally to all people, regardless of their status, their position. And I love this true leader in David, because you know what David did? He said, "I have sinned." He didn't say, "Well, the rules are different for me." He didn't say that. And that doesn't happen enough in our society and culture. David just fessed up. "I have sinned." Truths are absolute, even seemingly relative ones. Truth is discovered. It's not invented. Imagine that you're playing hide and seek. This is the way I would explain it, I guess, to the class back there on the left. Imagine you're playing hide and seek and your friend hides behind a tree. And even if you don't know where your friend is, they're still hiding behind the tree. In the same way, truth is like that hiding friend of yours. It's already there, even if you don't know it yet. You know, gravity was there before people discovered it. They didn't invent gravity. They discovered it. Truth is transcultural and unchanging despite evolving beliefs. Think of truth like a special recipe of chocolate chip cookies. No matter where you go or who makes it, the recipe stays the same. Even if someone comes along and thinks that they should put pickles in the cookie recipe and they think that's a good idea, it doesn't change the real recipe for chocolate chip cookies. Beliefs don't alter facts. Truth is not affected by attitudes. Imagine that you believe that you can fly like a superhero. So you jump off the chair in the living room, but when you jump off the chair, you still fall down to the ground. And even though you believe something, it didn't change the fact that you can't really fly. Truth is like that. What we believe doesn't change what is true. Truth is truth, and you can't change that. All truths are absolute, even ones that appear to be different. Now, I can tell you, Wayne is taller than me, but he's that much taller than me. He's only about 2 inches taller than me. And I love this place because you can see Ripley's believe it or not. Well, we're going to go with the or not on this one. We don't believe this. How would you solve this, by the way? I mean, doesn't it appear that Wayne is much, much taller than me and larger than me? How would you go about this? Is that true? Is that picture true?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a real picture, but is the height of the people in that picture true? Okay, the height of the people, how would you solve it? What would you do, Herb? Just shout it out. So, how would you solve it?
You have to be there.
Okay, you have to be there. You have to be there, and you have to have what in your hand? Tape measure. You get out the tape measure. We can measure this. We can find out if this is true or not. We're going to look at some evidence here, and we're going to find out if this is true. That's what you do. If you want to figure out truth, you look at the evidence, and you make a determination based on this. This is true also if you're looking at the end of the street and you go, that house down there is really small. And you go, what do you mean? You say, it's only that big. And it's like, well, it's 3/4 of a mile away. The person that's standing right next to it goes, no, this is a regular size house. But to me, it's only this tall. Well, just because your perception is one thing, that doesn't mean that your perception is always right. And we have enough understanding to know why that thing looks like it's far away. But isn't it interesting in the two-dimensional world, David, how do you make something look like it's far away in a piece of 2D plane? You make it what? Yeah, perspective, you make it in the background smaller. That's the same thing it would be in the front. He just made it smaller and it looks like, oh yeah, it's way back there. Now he uses other techniques, I'm sure, but that's the starting. There's perspective. This looks like it's far away. So if someone said to you, and this is out of the book, if someone said to you, I have one insight for you that absolutely will revolutionize your ability to quickly and clearly identify the false statements and the false philosophies that permeate our culture, would you be interested? Yes. If I said that I'm going to throw in a set of steak knives, would you be even more interested? It's kind of a sales pitch when you read it in the book, but if you think about this for just a minute, that's what we're about to do here, he continues in the book. In fact, they say in the book, if we had to pick just one thinking ability as the most valuable we've ever learned in our many years of seminary and postgraduate education, it would be this: how to identify and refute self-defeating statements. And I'm going to tell you something. Self-defeating statements are made all the time. Now, the book's going to use this thing called the Roadrunner tactic. And as you look at Wile E. up there, there's something that's really phenomenal. This is called cartoon logic. I'm always amazed. I mean, I have to use a lot of logic in my work, and I'm sure John Cielkes has to do this, and he's seen cartoon logic where people try to accomplish things. You go, that doesn't work. That only works in cartoons. You know what cartoon logic is, right? Bugs Bunny's on the end of the branch, and Elmer Fudd has him captured up there, and he takes out a saw, and he starts sawing the branch because he's going to cut that branch off, and Bugs Bunny's going to fall. But in cartoon logic, the tree falls straight down, and Bugs just stays there. If you look at Wile E. Coyote, he just went screaming past that Roadrunner. He was going 1 billion miles an hour. He almost had him, and the Roadrunner just stops cold. Boom! And they always make that sound. And he stops, and the coyote's like, in the smoke trail, and he goes off. But he turns around, and cartoon logic says he doesn't fall. He is just suspended there on nothing. Well, that's what a self-defeating statement looks like, or a self-defeating argument. It's not tied to anything. It's suspended on nothing. So I'm going to ask you, in this cartoon, we know what happens. Is he going to fall, first off? How many thinks he's going to fall?
Yes.
Okay, he's going to fall when?
After.
When he comes to what?
Realization.
The realization that he is not supported on anything. When he comes to that realization, he is going to plummet. And that's the way self-defeating arguments are and self-defeating statements. If you learn how to handle these types of statements with people, especially with the atheists, you're going to have success. There's a moment where they're there and they're looking at this tactic and they get all worked up into it, but there's this moment where things change. So let's look at my PowerPoint that didn't quite make it. Okay, I'll just have to give it to you. The first one says, this is a self-defeating statement. It says, I can't speak a word in English. That's me saying that. I can't speak a word in English. Okay, so here's how you'd work it. Step one is you identify the assertion or the claim that is being made. Well, what's the assertion that's being made here? I can't speak a word in English. Okay, so step two is you apply that assertion universally to itself, creating a contradiction or an absurdity. So I'm going to apply that statement to myself. Is that true that I can't speak a word in English? No, it's not true. Why? Because you're hearing something. What are you hearing? Well, first off, you're hearing the assertion, which is, I can't speak a word in English, and you're hearing it in English. So the third step is to highlight how this contradiction undermines the validity of the original assertion. It's not suspended on anything. It's obvious that and you're not really supposed to use the word obvious. Obvious isn't a good argument. The fact is that this argument fails and falls over on itself. This creates a contradiction because the speaker, that would be me, truly can speak in English. If they couldn't, they wouldn't be able to articulate the statement itself. Therefore, the original assertion is undermined by this contradiction as it demonstrates that the speaker is indeed capable of speaking English. I had some others. I love these. Nothing I do ever matters. So if you think about that statement, if the statement were true, then making that statement would not matter either. Why are you making this statement if nothing that you ever do matters? Why are you even making that statement? See, it's self-defeating. Or, I don't have an opinion. By stating this, the person is expressing an opinion, thus contradicting the statement that they're making. That is my opinion, that I don't have one. You shouldn't believe anything anyone tells you. I guess I won't believe anything that you ever say then, and including the statement that you just made that I shouldn't believe anything that anyone tells me. These are self-defeating statements. These are funny, and they kind of illustrate it well. But this is where the rubber meets the road. There is no truth is what's being said. All right, so let's look at this. What's wrong with there is no truth? Is this a self-defeating statement? Very much so. If there is no truth, then the statement, there is no truth, cannot be true. All right. When somebody says that to you, you want them to realize that they've gone off the cliff and they're suspended on nothing, and you bring that reality to them, and they're going to fall. And we're going to see this in a second. Actually, let me go back. I think I can go back one, right? Yeah. All truth is relative. I do want to make a comment. This one is harder to work through a process. And the reason why is it's not just false. It doesn't have any meaning when you think about it. All truth is relative. Well, the problem is, this creates a problem because the statement itself is relative. It means it's not always true for everyone, but it's not always true. And then the assertion that all truth is relative can't be universally true either. And this makes the original claim contradict itself. And when it does that, it loses its meaning. To help you understand what I just said, it would be better if I said it this way. I want to make an assertion, but before I do, you need to understand that it's not always true. When I say it like that, you start to get it. My assertion is that all truth is relative. And then you start to see the absurdity of the statement. It's suspending on nothing. And what's going to happen is it's going to come crashing down. Okay. This is what I'm thinking. Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes. See that the fields are white for harvest. I'm going to read this out of the book. What time does the class end, by the way? Okay. All right. Okay, I want to read this. This actually happened. This is the author of the book. He writes this. He was doing one of these methods, where you knock on the door and you got two questions. And his first question was, can I ask you a spiritual question? And they said yes. He was going to ask him a second question, which is, if you die tonight and stand before God, and you were to ask, why should I let you into my God asked you, why should I let you into my heaven? What would you say? So it's a knock on the door. And there's a who there. A man came to the door. And this is the author of the book, Norm. He says, I stuck out my hand and said, hi, my name is Norm Giesler. This is my partner, Ron, and we're from the church at the end of the street. I'm Don, the man replied, his eyes quickly sizing us up. Immediately I jumped into action with question number 1. Don, do you mind if we ask you a spiritual question? No, go ahead, Don said, boldly apparent that he was eager to eat and have a Bible thumper for dessert. I laid question 2 on him then. Don, if you were to die tonight and stand before God, and God were to ask you, why should I let you into my heaven, what would you say? And Don snapped back, I'd say to God, why shouldn't you let me into your heaven? Gulp. He wasn't supposed to say that. I mean, that answer wasn't in the book or the methodology that he had. So Don, after a split second of panic, I offered up a quick prayer and replied, Don, if we knocked on your door, seeking to come into your house, and you said to us, why should I let you into my house? And we responded, why shouldn't you let us in? What would you say? And Don pointed his finger at my chest and sternly replied, I would tell you where to go. I immediately shot back, that's exactly what God is going to say to you. Don looked stunned for a second, but then he narrowed his eyes and he said, to tell you the truth, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. You're an atheist? That's right. Well, are you absolute, and listen to the language, are you absolutely sure there is no God? You see what he's doing? He's setting them up into an absolute truth situation. He paused and he said, well, no, I'm not absolutely sure. I guess it's possible there might be a God. You know why? Because he believes all truth is relative. It's like there might be a God. So you're not really an atheist. You're an agnostic, I informed him, because an atheist says, I know there is no God, and an agnostic says, I don't know whether there is a God. Yeah, all right, so I guess I am an agnostic then, he admitted. Now this was real progress. With just one question, we moved from atheism to agnosticism. But I still had to figure out what kind of agnostic Don was. So I asked him, Don, what kind of agnostic are you? He laughed as he asked, what do you mean? He was probably thinking a minute ago, I was an atheist. I have no idea what kind of agnostic I am. Well, Don, there are 2 kinds of agnostics, I explained. There's the ordinary agnostic who says he doesn't know anything for sure. And then there's the ornery agnostic who says he can't know anything for sure. It can't be known. You can't know these things. Looking puzzled, he said, I'm sorry, I dropped a line here. Don was sure about this. He said, I'm the ornery kind. You can't know anything for sure. Did you hear it? All right, this is what you're looking for. That's the self-defeating statement right there. You can't know anything for sure. So, recognizing the self-defeating nature of his claim, I unleashed the Roadrunner tactic by asking him, Don, if you say that you can't know anything for sure, then how do you know that for sure? You see why this is important? This is a really easy conversation. I'm going to tell you, the fields are white, and they're ready for harvest. In a very gentle way, we should do this. You know, Nathaniel was a skeptic. He was. He was a skeptic, and he was shown evidence. Philip and Jesus both worked on him as apologists. Got a question here.
One other kind of agnostic. I don't want to know anything.
I don't want to know anything. That's unwilling, and we're going to get into the dangers of being unwilling. There's a time when you walk away. Brian touched on this just a little bit on Wednesday night. But yeah, the unwilling, you know, not everybody's going to be as receptive as Don is here. The unwilling. But you're going to meet Dons in life. So Don said, if you say that you can't know anything for sure, how then do you know that for sure? Well, looking puzzled, he said, what do you mean? Explaining it another way, I said, how do you know for sure that you can't know anything for sure? You know, and he's playing the same thing. It's not that hard to do. It's the same thing over and over and over. It's very repetitive because they all work the same way. I could see the light bulb coming on, but I decided to add one more point. Besides, Don, you can't be a skeptic about everything, because that would mean you'd have to doubt skepticism. You see what he's doing here? He's doing the same thing. He's working the self. That would mean that you'd have to doubt skepticism. He's just laying it out and saying the words that haven't been asked but are true of Don. But the more you doubt skepticism, the more sure you become. He relented, okay, I guess I really can know something for sure. I must be an ordinary agnostic. Now we're really getting somewhere. With just a few questions, Don had moved from atheism through honorary agnosticism to ordinary agnosticism. So I continued, since you admit now that you can know, why don't you know that God exists? And there it is. Shrugging his shoulders, he said, because nobody has shown me any evidence, I guess. Now I launched the million-dollar question. Would you be willing to look at some evidence? He was willing. Sure. And they're not all willing. That's true. But isn't that a beautiful story? This man becomes a believer in Jesus Christ. I had a roommate who was an atheist. Jenny Geiger knows, some of the people at PAR know him. It was Jerry Sanborn. When you teach an atheist and they come out of that and become a believer, they're very powerful believers. A lot of the guys that write these books were former atheists, and they have a really great insight into this because they were willing to examine the evidence. Sometimes we don't examine the evidence as hard. Well, I grew up in the church. It's like, well, I grew up in it. I know all the evidence. I don't have to examine it. I trusted my mom and dad. They told me it's real. But people who had to examine the evidence really are powerful people to be around. All right, so we'll try to do this. How can truth be known? Let's go ahead and get some input, and we'll end the classes, and who's got the mics?
I appreciate your idea on how can truth be known, because I think that's the whole point of the class, is truth can be known as a summation of evidence, and you reach an obvious conclusion. But one thing I want to mention, because I think it's important for this class, you guys are not teaching us how to win an argument or how to make somebody feel stupid or how to make somebody feel small. That conversation you just talked about that you read, there was no tone to it, but you have to imagine the tone was gentle and sincere. One of the reasons I think we've seen the backlash we have is because people have taken, this is the truth, and they throw it at you and they say, you better believe it. And no evidence, no discussion, no love. And so we have to keep that at the forefront of our mind, is that we're not trying to win an argument, we're trying to win a soul. And you guys are arming us to do that with evidence that supports our faith, separate and apart from Scripture. Because we're not always going to be able to start with Scripture.
Okay. Mary?
I said truth can be known by investigation or through a trusted informant.
Ooh.
And William James said, our faith is faith in someone else's faith, and in the greatest matters, this is most the case. And he wasn't a believer. He was a psychologist. That we take for granted much of what we know. I haven't investigated the atom myself, but I believe that they exist, because I have faith in, what other people have said about them.
Okay.
So, it comes around to what we often say here is that an atheist needs faith to believe in atheism.
Mary, I'm going to put you on the spot. Don't let go of the mic. I'm going to put you on the spot. How would you explain your answer to a dear friend or family member? I know she's answered this, I'm sure. How would you explain your answers to a dear friend or family member?
That's the next question, right?
Yeah.
I said these two things are self-evident through long practice, universal observance, more or less, throughout human existence. People have asked questions and investigated, and every culture deplores lying and honors at least the idea of trying to get at trying to perceive accurately.
So I'm going to answer Mary's question the way I think Mary should have answered it. Mary is the evidence. In her situation, Mary has lived a life that could be observed and seen, and with somebody, she has set the example. And the hope is that one day he will believe in Christ and be saved and become a Christian. Her life itself, the way you live your life, has some things to do with this. We're not going to get through the next section. What do I got? 1 minute. So there's this thing. You know what the favorite text of people, and it's going to fall under this, why all religions can't be true. The favorite text of people that don't know the Bible. You know what it is? You can't judge me. How dare you judge me? They know Matthew 7, verses 1 through 6. Our postmodern world has created the idea that truth isn't really a thing, that no ideology can be criticized, and that no one can be scrutinized. Satan has gotten everyone to believe in the lie that this is tolerance. The only thing we won't tolerate is tolerance. This is an example of them trying to be cute and clever when in reality they are actually being inherently self-contradictory. The same goes for people who say, you're judging, you're judging. No one can say that without passing some kind of judgment. When you say those words, you're judging. As you read through this, you know what the real story is here. It's about being a hypocrite. The person that says, you're judging me, you're judging me, you're judging me, is the example of the hypocrite. And you're going to find that as we continue the class, hopefully they'll come up, there'll be more opportunity to talk about this, but we'll stop there. The pluralist has this you're judging me type thing. Thanks for class.